Celine, I want to marry the silver-finned fourth prince, Sheldon Reeve. My younger sister, Princess Caroline Walsh, clung to my sleeve, pouting and pleading like a spoiled child. I know you care about appearances, so you'll probably go for the purple-finned sixth prince, Reginald Reeve, but personally, I think Sheldon is a real man's man. Caroline looked at me with a playful smile laced with subtle menace. At that moment, I knew she had been reborn too. Our father, the emperor, had long maintained a strong alliance with the merfolk and had arranged political marriages between the two races. However, offspring between humans and mermen were rare, almost impossible. To prevent the bloodline from dying out, our father made a bold decision. He had us princesses take a secret elixir that would alter our bodies to become fertile for merfolk. In the end, only Caroline and I succeeded. In my previous life, Caroline had grown up pampered and proud within the palace walls, her standards impossibly high. She fell hard for the strikingly handsome Reginald and turned up her nose at the rugged, muscular Sheldon, who was not so easy on the eyes. With a few sweet words, she coaxed me into marrying him instead. Not long after, I gave birth to two rare, black-finned children which were seen as the highest, most revered bloodline in the entire merfolk kingdom. It had been over 1,000 years since such a child was born. After that, the next few children I birthed were also black-finned. The Mer King was ecstatic, and he named Sheldon the Crown Prince, and I, by virtue of my children, became the Crown Princess, draped in wealth and power. As for Caroline, she bore a red-finned child that was considered the lowest bloodline. She became the shame of the royal family and a laughingstock among the merfolk. Mad with envy, she waited until I was weak from childbirth. Right after I gave birth to my 9th child, she ripped out the inner pearl that allowed me to breathe underwater. Then, she dismembered me and fed my body to the fishes. I had yet to speak, but I could already feel Sheldon's cold, calculating eyes fixed on me. The merman hated nothing more than people talking about his looks. In my past life, Caroline criticized his appearance to my face. After she gave birth to a red-finned child, he had her face slashed and tossed her to the lower-class merman to be enjoyed. She was doing it again, deliberately baiting him, trying to drag me down with her. What she did not know was that being Sheldon's consort was a fate worse than death. Sheldon was insatiable. He dragged me to bed day and night, completely ignoring whether my body could take it. Pregnancy did not stop him. In fact, it made it worse. He even brought in other male and female merfolk to join the fun. That was how I ended up having 9 children in just 3 years. To him, I was not a wife. I was a breeding tool and a way to vent his twisted desires. So, if Caroline wanted him so badly after her rebirth, why would I get in the way? In fact, I could not be happier to let her have him. I smiled at Caroline softly. Well, since you're so fond of Prince Sheldon, my dear sister, how could I possibly take the man you love? Caroline beamed triumphantly. Thank you, Celine. This time, I'll be the one to give birth to a black-finned heir. I will be the crown princess, and I will be the one to enjoy centuries of power and glory. I acted as though I could not understand her ramblings and instead turned toward Reginald. With perfect composure, I called out to him sweetly. My dear. He turned red, looking nervous and a little bashful. Honey. Caroline, eager to claim her prize, practically skipped over to Sheldon as she grabbed his arm and cooed. Honey, I'm your wife now. You have to treat me well, okay? Of course, Sheldon replied, visibly pleased. While still in the same room with us, the way he eyed her hungrily was already unsettling. That familiar glint of lust shimmered beneath the surface, barely contained. Then, the Mer King laughed heartily and sent the two princes off with their new brides to consummate their marriages. Sheldon did not wait a second. He scooped Caroline up into his arms and strode off in a hurry. As they passed, she tossed me a smug look and fluttered her lashes at Sheldon. Honey, I can walk by myself, she said, putting on an innocent, blushing act. I smiled back at her. I hoped she could keep that sweet little facade going once she found out what Sheldon was really like. After that, I went with Reginald to his estate. At the entrance, we were greeted by a lively swarm of fishes and young, lower-ranked merfolk. They circled around us excitedly, shouting in unison. Our princess is so beautiful. She and Prince Reginald look like a perfect match. The babies they'll have are going to be gorgeous. I just know it. Yay, we finally have a pretty princess too. For a moment, I just stood there in stunned silence. I had not expected a warm welcome like this. In my previous life, when I was forced to marry Sheldon, he dragged me straight to the bedroom. It was 3 full days and nights of torment. From the very beginning, he never saw me as a person. Noticing the look on my face, Reginald gave a sheepish laugh and said, they're a bit too excited. He then called out to the little ones. Give her some space. This isn't a show. Go on now. Even as he scolded them, he instinctively stepped closer, shielding me gently with his arms in case I was jostled. Ah, look at that. Prince Reginald is already protective of his bride, one of the younger merfolk teased. Still, they obediently scattered. Reginald turned to me with worry in his eyes. Are you all right? If they bother you, you can have them sent away. They won't dare lay a hand on you. I chuckled at his concern. I'm fine. I was just surprised, that's all. It's a nice kind of surprise. I was very surprised that Caroline managed to find faults despite having chosen Reginald as her husband in our previous life. After my bath, Reginald gently carried me to bed with the utmost care, as if I were something fragile and precious. Blushing slightly, he pulled out a small, glowing orb and awkwardly mused, this is half of my inner pearl. Once things get intense, those water-repelling pearls you've been using, they'll lose their effect. In our merfolk tradition, when we marry a human, we offer half our inner pearl so our bride can breathe and live underwater safely. I tilted my head to look up at him, feeling a warmth bloom quietly in my chest. Reginald was nothing like Sheldon. In my previous life, I did not know that I needed my husband's inner pearl before getting intimate. Sheldon did not care to tell me. When my water-repelling pearl failed and I began suffocating mid-act, he just stared, watching with sick excitement as I choked and thrashed. The more I panicked, the rougher he became. Only when I was on the brink of death did he finally toss me a piece of his own inner pearl. It was foul-smelling and putrid, just like the beast himself. However, Reginald's pearl was different. It was beautiful, clean, and warm to the touch. I lifted my chin and swallowed it. As I did that, my tongue brushed his fingers by accident, and his entire face went crimson. Then, clumsily, he began to undress me. His eyes paused when he caught sight of my long, pale legs, and he froze like he had been struck dumb. Ugly, aren't they? I asked quietly. Some mermen were disgusted by human legs. Sheldon had called them grotesque once. They were the most repulsive thing he had ever seen. Reginald panicked. No, not at all. Your legs are beautiful, so stunning that I forgot how it even works between humans and merfolk. I blinked. What? He stammered, flustered. I forgot the instructions in my love manual. You have a manual? Where is it? I asked, trying not to laugh. He looked away guiltily. It's under the bed. No wonder his face was red. Go get it, I said. Huh? Why? In case you forget again. You can read and learn on the job. It was no longer just his face and ears. His whole body was flushed, hot to the touch. His scales shimmered and fluttered open uncontrollably. He was clearly inexperienced. No matter how many illustrations were in that book, he was too nervous to get through it. In the end, he just held me close and whispered apologetically, I'm sorry. I smoothed the crease between his brows. It's all right. We have all the time in the world. There's no rush. Reginald knew I was still wary, so he did not push me. Instead, he started taking me out every day so I would not feel isolated in his estate. He wanted me to see the underwater world for myself. In my previous life, all I ever saw was the cold, towering palace of the merfolk, grand and intimidating. However, walking through bustling underwater markets, I realized how narrow my view of this world had been. I met other races, made friends, and laughed freely for the first time in ages. It was one of those new friends who told me the news that Caroline was pregnant. Apparently, after 3 days and nights of consummation with Sheldon, she conceived, twins, no less. The fish doctors confirmed it. I was not surprised. As a pregnancy maiden, she had enhanced fertility from the elixir, and Sheldon was not one to know when to stop. It would have been a miracle if she did not get pregnant. Celine, my father wants us to attend court. Reginald took my hand and led me to the Mer-King's hall. When we arrived, Caroline and Sheldon were already there. Caroline looked unnaturally flushed. Her belly was already swollen. The Mer-King beamed with delight, as expected of a pregnancy maiden raised by the human emperor. Well done, Princess Caroline. Now, Princess Celine, you'd better catch up. The palace could use a few more of my grandchildren. Caroline stroked her belly with exaggerated care as if it were cradling treasure. Your Majesty, she said sweetly, my husband and I are so deeply in love, and we both adore little mer-children. Why not let me take on the responsibility of bearing them all? Then, she turned to me, her voice syrupy and smug. Celine took 6 months to become a pregnancy maiden, yet I only needed 3. I guess my body's just naturally more suited for it. Maybe we shouldn't burden her anymore. Sheldon, ever hungry for the throne, chimed in, Father, however many heirs you want, Caroline will give them to you. The Mer-King laughed heartily. Very well, I like Princess Caroline's suggestion. Reginald frowned and stepped forward. Father, it's not her fault. If anything, it's mine. I failed to please Celine. I did not care about what the others said about me, but when I heard Reginald blame himself in order to protect me, I teared up a little. Caroline shot Reginald a disdainful glance. Prince Reginald, no one knows my sister's body better than I do. Whether she can even conceive is still a question, and even if she does, the best she'll manage is a red-finned mere-child. The Mer-King said nothing to scold her. After all, he valued heirs above all else. He only chuckled lightly and dismissed us with a wave. Reginald did not want me to bear that humiliation. His face darkened as he exclaimed, Princess Caroline, please mind your words. Caroline was not afraid of him in the slightest. She beamed triumphantly and replied, am I wrong? That belly of hers is only fit to birth red fins. Lowly, weak, and useless creatures. She pressed a hand protectively over her own bump, whereas I'm carrying not 1, but 2 black-finned mere-children. If anything happens to me, none of you could bear that responsibility. Her arrogance was based on her past experience. With her new life seemingly playing out similarly to the last, she was certain it would go her way. In my previous life, I had conceived 2 black-finned mere-children just 3 days after consummating my marriage with Sheldon. Caroline had not conceived until 6 months later, and even then, it was only a red-finned offspring. However, despite her status as a pregnancy maiden, she was never strong enough to produce black fins. I smiled calmly. Then, I wish you many children and a long life, dear sister. I was not upset. Not in the least. In fact, I had a feeling Sheldon would give her quite the lesson once they were behind closed doors. Just as expected, as soon as Reginald and I returned to our estate, I overheard gossip fluttering through the fish around the gates. Apparently, after Caroline and Sheldon returned home and entangled with each other with great enthusiasm, she began to bleed severely. It was premature labor. Human and merfolk births were not quite the same. I had studied all of it carefully once I became a pregnancy maiden. The Mer-King, afraid something might go wrong, summoned me personally to assist. The fish doctors did not dare look too closely, but I saw enough. Her body was torn. It was worse than mine had been during my traumatic first birth in my previous life. It was only the beginning. It would get worse, much worse. Caroline gasped between contractions, her face pale but full of fire. Celine, watch closely. See how I give birth to black-finned mere-children. Power, wealth, centuries of life. They're all mine this time. Ha ha ha. She was delirious, desperate to birth the babies and prove her worth. However, Caroline and Sheldon had been far too rough. Her birth canal was torn in several places, and blood was everywhere. For long hours passed before the first child was finally pulled from her womb. Its tail fin was a brilliant, unmistakable red color. I made sure to cradle the child gently in my arms and brought it right to her bedside. Beaming, I said warmly, Caroline, don't fall asleep yet. Look, your little one's already here. He looks so much like his father, doesn't he? Caroline's eyes widened in horror, and her body jerked. No, no, it's not possible. This isn't my baby. I was carrying black fins. This wretched thing, this worthless, filthy thing, there's no way it came from me. This is your doing. You were jealous, and you switched them. Caroline thrashed around and screamed, there's still another. Doctor, bring me my other baby. If anything's wrong with my black fin child, I'll have your heads for it. The poor doctor turned pale at her words. Princess, just a bit more. The second baby's almost here. Soon, it arrived. Panting, weak, Caroline clutched the blankets. Quick, show me my black-finned mare-child. The doctor wiped the sweat from his brow and swaddled the child. He then brought it to her. No, this can't be true. Caroline screamed. She stared at the red-finned mare-child in the doctor's hand and passed out on the spot. Everyone had assumed, thanks to Caroline's bragging and insistence, that she was carrying black-finned heirs. At most, they expected silver or purple fins. However, no one had expected 2 red fins in a row. In merfolk society, red fins were the lowest of the low, fragile, weak, and worthless. They were seen as slaves and would be a shameful stain in royal bloodlines. Even commoners wept in disgrace if they gave birth to one. There Caroline was, having given birth to 2, born into the royal family. It was nothing short of a scandal, the greatest joke the merfolk had seen in generations. Reginald saw the obvious grin on my face and could not help but laugh along. Celine, did you already know this would happen? I nodded, meeting his eyes with quiet seriousness. Do you think I'm cruel? My younger sister gave birth to the lowest kind of red-finned mere-children, and instead of feeling sorry for her, here I am, gloating. Reginald's smile faded. He gently shook his head. You and Princess Caroline are sisters by blood, yet she insulted you and claimed you were only fit to bear red-finned mere babies. If anyone's cruel, it's her, not you. He reached out and softly clasped my hand, his voice warm and steady. If she had given birth to black fins, she would have been even more arrogant. She never would have spared you a second glance. Everything that's happened to her, she brought them upon herself. My eyes stung with unshed tears. Caroline was born to the emperor's most beloved consort, and the emperor adored her. Out of all the princes and princesses, she had the finest silks, the rarest pearls, the best of everything. He spoiled her into arrogance. Caroline hated me, so naturally, the emperor turned cold toward me too. Time and again, just to please her, he would humiliate and punish me. After marrying Sheldon, my life only worsened with endless torment and nights of pain. I had often thought of ending it all, but every time, my mere-children would find it and report me to Sheldon. What followed was more suffering and deeper despair. The centuries of life granted to me as a merfolk bride felt less like a blessing and more like an unrelenting curse. It was not until I married Reginald that I realized I, too, was someone worthy of being loved. He stood by me, defended me, and treated me like I was the most precious pearl in the sea. How foolish Caroline was to believe that Reginald was not good enough, and even more foolish to look at my happiness and feel jealous. That night, Reginald held me in his arms. Wrapped in his warmth, I asked suddenly, that love manual of yours, how's the studying going? His ears instantly flushed a deep crimson. All those, hundreds of positions, I've learned them all, he stammered. I once woke up in the middle of the night to find him quietly studying the illustrated manuals in secret. His face beat red, hands trembling, eyes focused with utmost seriousness. It was so endearing that I could not help but tease him once in a while. I gently brushed his scales and whispered, honey, I want to try. I wanted to shed the nightmares of my past. Okay. His voice was soft, trembling with excitement. With care, he undressed me, his fingertips reverent, his gaze full of love. When he saw my body, the flush spread down to his neck, but he did not disappoint. Reginald had memorized it all. His movements were awkward, unpracticed, and it took some time for us to find our rhythm. The shadows in my heart slowly faded. His tenderness never once sparked revulsion in me. Instead, it made me begin to enjoy this feeling.